The silly map my son drew of our neighborhood helped detectives identify the hit-and-run driver. Detective Raymond Cho spread my 7-year-old son's crayon drawing across the conference table at the police station, and I watched him study the crooked houses and misspelled street names with an intensity that seemed absurd given the source material. Oliver had drawn this map 3 weeks ago during a rainy Saturday afternoon when he was bored, labeling every house on our block with elaborate details only a child would notice. Mrs. Kemper's house had 3 garden gnomes. The Alvarez family home was marked barking dogs always, and our house at the corner was identified as best tree house in America. Detective Cho pointed to a specific detail on Oliver's map, a small blue rectangle drawn in the driveway of the house belonging to Richard Donovan, our neighbor who served as deputy mayor. The rectangle had a careful label in Oliver's blocky handwriting: shiny truck, dark blue, big dent front. That dent matched perfectly with the paint transfer and impact pattern from the hit and run that had killed my wife Sarah 3 nights ago. She'd been jogging at dawn when a vehicle struck her on Maple Street 2 blocks from our home, then drove away, leaving her bleeding on the pavement. A dog walker had found her 20 minutes later. She'd died in the ambulance before reaching the hospital. Oliver had been sleeping when it happened, had woken to find police officers in our kitchen, and his mother gone forever. Detective Cho had initially dismissed the map when I'd brought it to the station yesterday, had looked at me with the patient sympathy reserved for grieving widowers grasping at straws, but his partner, Detective Lisa Kramer, had noticed the detail about the dent and insisted they follow up. Richard Donovan owned a dark blue Silverado pickup truck. I'd seen it in his driveway countless times without ever noticing any damage, but Oliver had noticed because children notice everything adults ignore. He'd been fascinated by that dent, had asked me repeatedly why Mr. Donovan didn't fix his truck. I told him some people didn't care about dents, that it was none of our business. Now that dent was potentially evidence in my wife's murder. Detective Cho called his forensics team and requested an immediate inspection of Donovan's vehicle. I sat in the conference room while officers drove to Donovan's house to conduct a voluntary vehicle inspection. Richard had agreed readily when they'd called, had said he was happy to help the investigation in any way possible, had expressed his condolences about Sarah's death. He'd been at our house the day after it happened, had brought a casserole and offered his assistance with anything we needed, had hugged me and told Oliver that his mother was in heaven watching over him. If Richard Donovan had killed my wife, he'd done it with extraordinary calm, and then attended her impromptu memorial with apparent genuine grief. The forensics call came 90 minutes later. Detective Cho put it on speaker so I could hear. The technician's voice was measured but excited. The dent on the front driver's side bumper contains paint transfer consistent with the victim's running jacket. Fabric fibers embedded in the impact point match the clothing she was wearing. The damage pattern is consistent with a pedestrian strike at approximately 35 to 40 miles per hour. This is your vehicle. Detective Cho thanked him and hung up, then looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. We have probable cause now. We'll be arresting Richard Donovan within the hour. I asked why Donovan would have killed Sarah, what possible motive he could have. Detective Kramer explained that hit and run didn't always mean intent to kill, that Donovan might have been drunk or distracted, might have panicked after the impact and fled rather than face consequences. The crime was the fleeing, not necessarily the initial collision. But something about that explanation felt insufficient. Sarah had been jogging the same route at the same time every morning for 3 years. Everyone in the neighborhood knew her routine. If Richard had hit her accidentally, he would have known immediately who the victim was. He would have known he'd killed his neighbor's wife, and he'd still driven away and then brought us a casserole the next day. I went home to relieve my mother, who'd been watching Oliver while I dealt with police procedures and funeral arrangements. Oliver was drawing again, another map, this one of the park where Sarah used to take him. My mother pulled me aside in the kitchen and asked if there was any progress in the investigation. I told her they'd identified a suspect and would be making an arrest. I didn't tell her who. Didn't want to speak that betrayal out loud yet. Oliver came into the kitchen and asked when Mommy was coming home, a question he'd asked 17 times since Thursday despite being told repeatedly that she was dead. His 7-year-old brain couldn't process permanent loss, kept expecting her to walk through the door with groceries or come upstairs to tuck him in. I knelt down and held his shoulders and told him again that Mommy was gone, that she wasn't coming back, that we would miss her together forever. Oliver started crying, and I held him while my mother turned away to hide her own tears. When Oliver calmed down, I told him that his map had helped the police, that his drawing was going to help find the person who hurt Mommy. He looked up at me with red eyes and asked if drawing more maps would help. I told him maybe, but right now he should just draw whatever made him happy. Richard Donovan was arrested at 4 p.m. that afternoon, and that's when things took a turn I never expected. To see the full story, click the link below or go on my channel.